Hey, this is Chris, and in this video I'm going to talk about red meat. I'm going to talk about whether red meat is healthy or unhealthy. Also, I'm going to ask the public for their opinions on red meat. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
But yeah, I think meat, red meat, I don't think people should consume it every day because it leads to like heart disease and stuff, but I think it's cool.
I think like you can eat it, but like I don't think as humans we should eat it every day. Like I think we could eat it like once in a while. But I also think that like meat practices, like we need to like control them with hormone free and like just managing that too.
Couldn't live your healthiest if you're only eating lean meats. What's your opinion on red meat? Do you think it's healthy or unhealthy?
But I think it's healthy, but in a way that we consume it in a moderate way, like not every day, or it shouldn't be like maybe available for burgers in each, a burger shop or something like that. So I think we need to be moderate with it. So is it healthy? I believe it is because people have been eating that for centuries. So yeah, but in a moderate way. Yeah. I think meat in general, I don't think we should eat it every day. I think it should be like a once per week, how our elders used to eat it.
So you eat like roughly once a week yourself, would you?
No, maybe like not every day, but not once a week. So that's something that I want to change.
Well, I haven't eaten red meat in years. I'm a vegan.
Well, I think it's definitely not healthy if you abuse it of it, but I will say about every type of food.
Why is that? Is it for nutrition or health-wise?
Yeah, well, health-wise, and I don't like the idea of killing animals.
Okay.
But mainly health-wise, and I'm 63 now, and I'm still in good health.
That's good, yeah.
So it's probably work for me.
It's unhealthy, but I love eat meat, yeah. But I'm pretty sure it's not good for us.
Honestly, I have no scientific idea or
Okay.
I don't know if it's really healthy or not, or if it's bad or not.
Yeah.
I personally think if you eat not in too big, how do you say, if it's not in a big amount, exactly, then it's probably fine.
Okay.
But I don't know for sure.
Okay, yeah.
But I personally don't really care in that sense. I eat it, and I think it's fine.
I don't know how to explain, but we usually see people saying about that, and a lot of vegetarian people. So they explain, but I'm not pretty sure how to explain. I love eating, so it's pretty hard. But I know it's not good for us. It's much better for the health if you just eat, vegetables and this stuff, yeah.
I used to like burgers, but I don't really eat them anymore because I don't really like them and I prefer chicken burgers. So a lot of fats and microplastics in red meat.
Fats and which?
Microplastics, yeah. I mean, just the economic climate of the world, it's really hard to, buy certain foods that are...
Yeah, no, I think it's healthy. I try and eat it. I eat it all the time. You don't, but I do. Yeah. So I would never go out to a restaurant and order the vegetarian option, is what I'm saying. I would always go for meat.
He always has a burger.
When we're talking about red meat, what are we talking about? Okay, so we're talking about things like beef, lamb, bison, goat, mutton, veal, that type of thing. Pork can also be included in red meat as well. When people talk about red meat, they say, oh, it's bad for your heart. Okay, and one of the things that they say is bad for your heart, the first thing I'm going to talk about is saturated fat. So people say saturated fat is bad for your heart. Okay, so that means that red meat is high in saturated fat. So that's what causes heart disease, because of the saturated fat. Okay, so first, to understand what saturated fat is, we have to understand what fat is in general. So fat, what does it do? It's used for storage and heat insulation of the skin. Okay. There are two types of fat: saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Saturated fat is usually solid at room temperature, so it's known as a solid fat, whilst unsaturated fat, that's liquid at room temperature. So it's also known as a liquid fat. Okay, so saturated fats, right? They come from animal foods. Also, though, coconut oil and cocoa butter, they're pretty high in saturated fat as well. Whereas unsaturated fat, that comes from plant foods. So in the late 1950s, a man called Ansel Keys, he did a study called the 7 country study. And what he found was that by eating saturated fat, that causes heart disease because it increases cholesterol levels in your blood, and that increases your risk of heart disease. It became known as the diet heart hypothesis because even though it was called the 7 country study, it was actually 22 countries in this study, but he excluded countries that didn't fit the hypothesis. Because of the whole heart disease thing, the diet heart hypothesis, what they want to do was limit the levels of saturated fat, so you want to increase the unsaturated fat, which wasn't associated with heart disease. Okay, so what they did was in the late 1980s, what they did was there's a thing called partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. Okay, so what they did was with the unsaturated fats, they because they're liquid at room temperature, they wanted to saturate them. They had to saturate the unsaturated fats to make them solid at room temperature. Because as we said, that's a liquid fat, the unsaturated fats. So to give it a longer shelf life and to make it solid at room temperature, they had to saturate the unsaturated fats. Okay, but when you do that, then it oxidizes. Okay, we're going to talk about oxidation more. But when you do that, and then that can cause heart disease, trans fats can. So when they saturate the unsaturated fat, that makes it into a trans fat. And then they're also known as then partially hydrogenated vegetable oils. So for example, canola oil is trans fat. Also, like stuff like margarine and all, that's going to be a trans fat. Saturated fat is important, okay? Because you see, stearic acid, okay, that's a saturated fat. And that's needed for, because it's associated with weight loss and reduced blood pressure. Okay, so you need stearic acid, okay, and that's the saturated fat. So that's why saturated fat is important. Another reason why saturated fat is important is because there's a thing called rabbit starvation. So in 1928, there was a study carried out by Vilmar Stephenson and his colleague Carsten Andersen. So they're Arctic explorers, and then they found that people who ate the blubber of animals, right, animals that had a lot of blubber, so whales, seals, walruses, that type of thing, then they lived healthier. When they ate only lean meats, then they got sick, and then they developed many different things because, so like for example, chicken is low in saturated fat. So when you're eating, what they found is that when you ate, you couldn't live your healthiest if you're only eating lean meats. Okay, so what did Carsten Andersen and Vilmar Stephenson do? When they got back to New York, what they did was they did a year long where they only ate meat. So they only ate meat for an entire year. You see, what Vilmar Stephenson said in his book called The Fat of the Land, when people eat foods that are high in blubber, okay, they're healthier than people who ate low-fat foods. So you can eat animal foods, but if you're just eating chicken and turkey all day, then you're not going to get the saturated fat, and then you're going to run into rabbit starvation. So check out that book, The Fat of the Land by Vilmar Stephenson. So if you're eating like red meat, then that's going to have more fat than if you're eating white meat, like chicken, turkey, that type of thing, okay? So rabbit starvation, also known as protein poisoning, also known as fat starvation, because you need the fat, okay? That's one of the macronutrients, and you need that to live healthy. So people say it's going to make me fat if I eat fat, but actually it's a sugar, because that spikes your insulin levels, okay? And when you spike your insulin levels, then you're going to get fat storage. So by eating too much sugar, that's going to cause the issue. You might say, oh yeah, but the saturated fats, so I'll eat nuts and seeds and so forth, but then you're not getting the fat soluble vitamins.
I think probably in moderation. I think you can't eat too much red meat. I think it's bad for your heart if you do. Cholesterol.
To understand cholesterol, we have to understand what cholesterol is in the first place. Cholesterol is a waxy fat-like substance that's found in every cell of your body. Okay, it's found in every cell of your body. And there are two main types of cholesterol that people talk about. So they say LDL and HDL. LDL stands for low density lipoprotein. HDL stands for high density lipoprotein. HDL is known as the good cholesterol, and people say LDL is known as a bad cholesterol. So people say, you see, the thing is, right, people say, I don't want to have too much cholesterol. Okay, I don't want too high of cholesterol. because that's bad. Because it, okay, but you see, because that'll cause a heart disease then. But you see, cholesterol, is actually the cholesterol that you eat doesn't actually raise your cholesterol. Okay, the dietary cholesterol you eat doesn't raise your cholesterol. And also then people say, okay, maybe cholesterol isn't bad, okay? But I just want to remove the LDL cholesterol, okay? I don't want much LDL cholesterol. So first off, right, cholesterol is important, okay? You need cholesterol because cholesterol, as I said, it's found in every cell of your body. Also, it's the precursor to vitamin D. Okay, so cholesterol, because cholesterol, okay, because it's the precursor to vitamin D. Okay, so without vitamin D, you can't absorb, without cholesterol, you can't absorb vitamin D. Okay, so you can't absorb it from the sun. And then secondly, another thing is that it's a precursor to the steroid hormones. Okay, so the sex hormones as well. So like cortisol, and then you've got like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, those type of things. So you need that, okay? So you need cholesterol for those things. And then also for bile acids. See, what happens is LDL delivers cholesterol to the cells, while HDL removes excess cholesterol from the cells. So you need it because you need it delivered to the cells in the first place. The term LDL and HDL, high density lipoprotein, LDL, low density lipoprotein. So they're not even cholesterol. HDL and LDL aren't even cholesterol. They're lipoproteins, okay? So the proteins, okay? And what happens is the lipoproteins carry stuff like cholesterol, and then they carry other stuff like triglycerides and protein. So they're not actually cholesterol, okay? The lipoproteins, they just carry it. So it's like the cargo, okay? The boat is a lipoprotein. That's a boat. And then the cholesterol is just the cargo that's on the boat. Cholesterol is only a small fraction. How many boats are in the water? Not what's in the cargo. How many lipoproteins are in the water or in your bloodstream? Because cholesterol goes in the container. Because it can't float in water. It won't float in the blood. It has to go into a container. There's more information on this part. Read the book, The Great Cholesterol Myth, Revised and Expanded. That's a good book. It doesn't matter about what's in the cargo. It's a lipoprotein itself. So is it oxidized? So you see, there's subfractions of cholesterol, okay? There's at least 13 subfractions of cholesterol, so like of HDL and LDL, okay? So there's LDL2A, LDL2B, HDL 2A, oxidized LDL, VLDL, all those things, okay? And you see, what happens is, just because the cholesterol is there, it doesn't mean that it's bad. See, LDL is bad when it's oxidized. It's like saying, oh, fight broke out in a nightclub. That doesn't mean that just because the bouncer's there that he started fight. It's like, I think Paul Saladino made the analogy that like if there's firefighters, or just because the firefighter is there doesn't mean that he actually caused the fire in the first place. He was just showed up there. That doesn't mean that he caused it. So just because the cholesterol is there doesn't mean that caused heart disease, because it says, oh, it clogs your arteries. By eating too much cholesterol, it doesn't. It's only oxidized LDL. Also, another thing is that if there's too many boats in the water, so if you've too much boats, like lipoproteins in water, then that can cause issues, okay? Because it's like as if in a nightclub, if there's too many people, then the fight can break out, okay? If there's too many people, so you don't want too many lipoproteins in the water, because then that could cause issues, okay? So like, too many people in the nightclub, then that can cause it. If it's overcrowded, then that can cause issues, okay? So you can do an NMR particle test to check how many boats are in the water, and to check what type of particle size it is as well, because that's important. So particle A versus particle B, because the particle A, like if you have LDL the patrons, so the pattern A, that's going to be less inflammatory than pattern B, okay? So pattern A LDL or HDL, I can see pattern A is larger and fluffier compared to the pattern B, which is smaller, and that can get clogged in your arteries, and that can cause atherosclerosis, okay, and then that can lead to heart disease. So pay attention to that. So the NMR test test what subfractions, okay, whether it's oxidized LDL or not, and to check how many boats are in the water, okay. Then go back to okay, so what actually does cause heart disease then? Sugar, stress, inflammation, and oxidation. So if you even think about it, you get the low-fat craze, low-fat yogurts, but they're higher in sugar then. You're eating foods that are going to spike your insulin level. They're going to cause weight gain. They actually might give you a heart disease, but you're eating low-fat things because they're going to be high in sugar. So you should be more concerned about that than being concerned about red meat. Another thing then people says, okay, maybe heart disease isn't caused by eating red meat then. But what about cancer? That red meat causes cancer. What's your opinion on red meat? Do you think it's healthy or unhealthy?
Unhealthy.
Okay, why?
It's bad for your heart, bad for your stomach, leads to cancer later in life, shorter lifespan. Yeah.
Why? What do you mean when it's bad for your stomach? I didn't actually hear when you say it. I was just curious.
So like it clogs up your stomach, and it can lead to like colon cancer if you eat it in large amounts without fiber.
I think it's like carcinogenic. There's some studies on it right now. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
Going back to the point about the trans fats, okay? So they're going to be, if you're eating foods high in trans fat, then they oxidize, okay? And they become rancid. And then they have a poor omega-3 to omega-6 ratio as well. So stuff like margarine, corn oil. You see, it's important what oil you cook the food in as well in the first place with red meat. If you cook it in something like coconut oil, that's going to be better than if you're cooking it in something like canola oil or something, okay? Or maybe even sesame seed oil or one of those that oxidize, right? And then are high in omega-6. Whereas if you're eating something high in omega-3, have a good balance, a good ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, like coconut oil, okay? If you're cooking red meat in coconut oil, then that's going to be healthier than just cooking in something some trans fat, okay, or something that's going to oxidize at high temperatures. It's processed meat that causes cancer, not red meat. So processed meats, trans fats, they all cause cancer, not the red meat. There's no studies to show that unprocessed red meat causes cancer. So we've established that red meat isn't unhealthy.
Yeah, sure. So I think I was vegetarian for like 3 years. And I started eating red meat again because I started university on top of full-time work, and I actually saw lots of benefits in terms of my sleep, in terms of my energy. So I'm not a vegetarian anymore. But yeah, so I would say it does, but definitely depends on the person.
Yeah, I felt the same because I wasn't vegetarian, but I was a vegan before. Then I noticed I was very skinny as well, and it's just like
quite tired, like fatigued.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really it. So yeah, I would eat red meat now, but not all the time. Maybe like once or twice a week. But
for me, yeah, I think it's healthy. I was in first year college last year, and I wasn't doing too much cooking myself. So I realised that I hadn't eaten red meat in like a month or two, and my iron levels had gone down a lot. So for me, that's just the one thing. I think it's good for iron. Yeah. I haven't seen any problems with it, anyways. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well I think you do definitely get a lot of vitamins and iron and stuff like that in red meat that you can't really get anywhere else. Or you have to take supplements and everything. So I do think it's important in everyone. But then obviously people can find alternatives and everything. But I do think that there's health benefits that red meat brings that you can't really find anywhere else.
Red meat is actually beneficial and actually is high in nutrients, and some of them include, for example, red meat is high in protein.
Actually, red meat is healthy, I think. It's it's protein, so yeah, it should be healthy.
Protein is a macronutrient and it provides the raw material for the building blocks of the body. So it's not only high in fat, but it's also high in protein. So if you want to beef up, bulk up, then they have protein in them and they have creatine.
Yeah, I think you feel stronger after eating
exactly.
red meat. Yeah, and if you're training a lot and stuff, it's good for protein and obviously.
Red meat is also high in creatine, and creatine is important for building muscle. So people take supplements for building muscle. But actually, red meat is actually a natural source of creatine. So that's the healthiest one, instead of taking from supplements, and you might even absorb it that well from a supplement, okay? So you absorb it better from food source, and then red meat, that's very high in creatine. Because if you're eating say for example, tofu or beans or something, the essential amino acids, you can't get some of them from, for example, carnitine or what's the other one, creatine. You can't get that from beans, for example. Red meat is also high in B12. Okay, so it's high in cyanocobalamin, and that helps break down fatty acids and amino acids and helps support nerve cell membrane. Red meat is also high in B3, also known as niacin, okay? And that is important for proper digestion and for skin health. Okay, that's niacin, B3. And then red meat is also high in iron, which is important for growth and development, thus to create hormones.
Yes, I think so. You get a lot of your iron from the red meat, but I can probably go vegetarian. You know, I could quite easily not eat meat.
I didn't eat meat from tree, so I suffered a lot with iron deficiency when I was growing up. So things like that, it's important for that. Yeah.
Well, how would you get like your iron in, or?
Well, I green leafy veg now. That's what I do a lot of, or supplements.
And if I need to get my iron or stuff like that, and just spinach, try and avoid it.
Red meat is high in heme iron, okay? Because it's non-heme iron and heme iron. Because people say, oh, I'm gonna just eat spinach, for example, for iron. But that's non-heme iron, and that doesn't get converted well in the body into heme iron. The paper value doesn't actually necessarily mean that it's what you absorb. So just because the paper value might say that spinach is high in iron, that's non-heme iron. It doesn't convert well into heme iron, the iron that you want. Heme iron, that's naturally found in animal foods.
Like, people who obviously have iron deficiency, like, they're gonna need it, so there's no point in like cutting all meat off. And like some cultures, they just eat meat. Like because I'm Eastern European, so we eat a lot of meat. Like every place you go, you eat meat, and if you don't eat meat, you're like seen as a weirdo. Like, just supposed to eat it.
Red meat is also high in zinc, which is required for bone tissue renewal and mineralization.
You know, even though I am a vegetarian, I know that, you know, you do need meat. Do you know that way if you don't want to supplement.
Red meat is also high in CLA, which stands for conjugated linoleic acid, which helps protect the heart and suppress tumours. Okay, so CLA, okay, this is going to be higher in red meat if it's from food, from animals that are higher in omega-3. So if you're eating like beef, for example, that's grass-fed, then that's going to be higher. Like an iron, it's going to be pretty much grass-fed, so it's going to be pretty high in CLA. And even better again if you find grass-finished. If it just says grass-fed, then maybe during the summer it might be just grass-fed. There's certain months of the year that might be fed grain. Okay, or maybe during it's eating all grass during the day and then at night it's fed grain. Okay, where if you find grass finished, it's always the whole day, the whole year it's fed grass.
I think like you can eat it, but like I don't think as humans we should eat it every day. Like I think we could eat it like once in a while. But I also think that like meat practices, like we need to like control them with hormone free and like just managing that too.
Yeah, I guess my dad's a farmer, so I would just say as well that like a lot of people would be like don't eat meat because the animals and stuff, but I think in Ireland it's like not too bad because, well, you're given farmers business, and also like cows are reared very well and looked after very well in Ireland most of the time. So.
And then red meat is also high in phosphorus, and phosphorus is the second most abundant mineral in the body. Okay, and what happens is that like people, like the most abundant is calcium, but people get too much calcium in the diet. They try to focus too much on the calcium and not the phosphorus. Okay, so red meat is high in phosphorus. So people think about, oh, I'm just going to have calcium for my bones. They'll make my bones healthy. But actually, phosphorus is important as well. Red meat is also high in selenium, which helps prevent cell damage and helps support thyroid health. So red meat is very healthy. If you have a low budget, then you're saying, oh, I can't afford the fattier cuts of red meat. Well, then just go for the leaner cuts of red meat and then add fat to the diet. So that's the trick. So you could say, oh, go for the leaner cuts of red meat. So I can still eat red meat, but I can also add like maybe butter to your diet or cheese or egg yolk. That way you're still getting the saturated fat in, which is important again, as I said, the saturated fat. So if you have a budget, then you can afford the red meat because you're eating leaner cuts, so they're usually cheaper than the fattier cuts of red meat. If you're to eat only one food for the rest of your life, which would you eat? Red meat, so beef, chicken, chickpeas, or spinach. Okay, we're just using these as examples. If you just had to quickly pick one of those four, okay, these are just examples. You go for the beef because you see, it's got high in saturated fat. It's whereas the others aren't. So you could say, oh, chicken is high in protein though, and that's true. But like, then like chicken doesn't have the saturated fat. Okay, you're going to run into rabbit starvation. You're not going to get much of the stearic acid, okay, because it's very low in saturated fat chicken, and then you wouldn't survive on. Okay, you need the fat, so it's just protein and no fat in the chicken, so you need the fat. Okay, so you're going to miss out on one of the macronutrients. And then with the spinach, for example, you're not, people are going to say, oh, you get iron at least. But again, it's non-heme iron. You're not going to convert it well in your body to heme iron, which is the natural one that's found in animal food. So you're not even going to get that much iron from it. And you're going to miss out on a lot of protein, a lot of stuff from spinach. The fat, you're not going to be able to survive on spinach alone. Okay? And then with the chickpeas, you're not going to, people say, oh, it's high in protein though. But again, that's not, it hasn't got all the essential amino acids, okay? The building blocks for protein. And also, it hasn't got like, hasn't got some of the B12, the iron, hasn't got much of that at all. So you're going to be missing a lot of nutrition. Okay, so they're not going to do it any good. Where red meat, it's got pretty much everything. Like there is a few nutrients that's missing out on. You could say vitamin C, for example. But most of it, it's got, okay, most of the things it's got. So you would be able to survive a long time on just eating red meat alone. If you see epidemiological studies or food frequency questionnaires, so you might say, oh, drinking coffee twice a day helps reduce cholesterol levels. Okay, or maybe you'd say reduce your risk of heart disease. Okay, so drinking 2 cups of coffee helps reduce heart disease. But you see, the thing is, right, there, and then they say, oh, how many times a week did you eat red meat? They ask people, and then people might say, oh, I ate 3 times a week, or I ate 5 times a week, or whatever, etc, etc. And they don't remember how many times they ate it last week or last month. Or maybe they are just say something just not sound bad. So they might say, oh, because they heard that eating too much cholesterol is bad. So I'll say I only ate red meat 3 times a week, even though they might really eat it 5 times a week. Or maybe they ate the processed red meat and they wouldn't have got mixed up and they wouldn't, I mean, because see, the low fat craze, avoid the red meat, eat the low fat, because the low fat craze. People take statins to reduce cholesterol levels, but by doing that, you reduce your CoQ10 in the body, or coenzyme Q10, which is good for your heart. So if you're reducing the thing that's good for your heart by taking statins, you're taking the very thing that's good for your heart. So that's not going to be good. Okay, so that's not going to be good for your heart. Or people take cholesterol lowering drinks, etc. The same reason, to lower your cholesterol levels. But as I said, you need cholesterol for all those things, the precursor to vitamin A, to vitamin D, to the sex hormones, it's found in every cell of your body, the vitamin D, the cholesterol, So you need cholesterol. So you don't want to lower it by taking statins. That's going to do more harm than good. And then also, going back to the other thing about the food frequency questionnaires and all that. So people might say, oh, drinking 2 cups of coffee a day, that's going, like, just for example, right? We're going to just use examples. Like maybe there's a study, oh, drinking 2 cups of coffee a day reduce your risk of heart disease, okay? Because you do a food frequency questionnaire maybe, or epidemiological study. And then, because they might ask people questions like, oh, what did you eat last week or last month? And then people are guessing and they can't remember. So they say, oh, I only ate red meat once a week, just to not look bad. Okay, so you would say, oh, I only ate it once a week, but they really ate it maybe like 5 times a week or something. Or maybe they eat processed meats, or maybe they're smoking when they're doing this study. So even though they're eating healthy or whatever, they're still taking cigarettes, so you can't be taken to, just random things. You can't actually, they're not doing a randomized controlled study. They're doing an epidemiological study, or maybe food frequency questionnaires. Okay. So what you do is you do an epidemiological study and say, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me take it further and do a controlled study. So epidemiological studies can be good. If you go further into detail, then those studies can be good, okay? So if you say this might cause that, like coffee might be healthy in this way, but let's take it further down this rabbit hole. Like you don't just say that's healthy and not look deep into it. To summarize the video, red meat is healthy. Don't be too concerned about the cholesterol, the saturated fat in red meat. Get the NMR particle size test and see if, and be more concerned about like if it's not just if it's LDL, because LDL is important, because that delivers cholesterol to the cells, and then the HDL removes excess cholesterol from the cells, right? So the LDL It's more about the particle size, okay? If it's a big fluffy particle A size, then it's not going to cause any issues. Cholesterol is only a problem when it gets damaged by oxidation and inflammation. So it's not, so cholesterol itself isn't the issue. And also, it's not about the saturated fat and the cholesterol, it's more so about the sugar. Because you don't absorb much of the cholesterol you get from foods. And then red meat is high in protein, high in fat, creatine, which helps to build muscle, high in zinc, high in CLA, conjugated linoleic acid, high in stearic acid, high in iron, B3, B12. Red meat is one of the healthiest foods in the world. Eat it and make sure if you're going to cook it in a pan or something, make sure you use a healthy oil. Coconut oil I recommend that one. Eat red meat and then see how you feel on it and see, oh, was it red meat or was it something else I ate with it? Correlation doesn't mean that it's causation. So just because something says that something's healthy doesn't necessarily, it could be a third factor, so be careful of that. If you have heart disease, think about, oh, maybe it's because of all the sugar I'm eating, maybe it's because of all the stress I'm under. So hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.
Obviously, I don't think people should consume it every day because it leads to like heart disease and stuff, but I think it's cool if you want.
Do you want to be in the video after?
What is it? For YouTube.
Are your friends, eh?
No.
Are you going to be in the video after? Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
We need, everything is in moderation, including Guinnesses.
Oh, Guinness, yeah, I don't drink Guinness. Yeah.